And that's House Speaker Mike Johnson announcing the moment the House passed President Trump's big, beautiful bill earlier this morning in a vote of 215 to 214. This means the self-imposed Memorial Day deadline has been achieved, and the bill now moves on to the Senate. The bill includes permanent provisions for the 2017 Trump tax cuts. They will be extended, a boost to the child tax credit and the pass-through business deduction, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, enhanced deduction for seniors, and a $40,000 SALT cap. Money for the border, money for defense. Speaker Johnson saying this: we look forward to the Senate's timely consideration of this once-in-a-generation legislation. We are going to send that to his desk. We're going to get there by Independence Day on July 4th, says the Speaker.
House Democrats voted against all of that. So everything that I just said, they voted the opposite. Clearly proves they must want the largest tax increase in U.S. history on the American citizens. They must want open borders. They've proven that over and over. They must want Medicaid for illegal immigrants. We look forward to the Senate's timely consideration of this once-in-a-generation legislation. We stand ready to continue our work together to deliver on the one big, beautiful bill, as President Trump named it himself. We're going to send that to his desk. We're going to get it there by Independence Day on July 4th. And we are going to celebrate a new golden age in America. Thank you for being here. I will yield next to our leader, Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as the Speaker said, it truly is morning in America again. You know, when you think about all of the work that's gone in to putting this bill together, it's one big, beautiful bill for a lot of reasons. There are a lot of really important wins for the American people in this bill. And we had 11 committees come together and meet in hearings. Some went on over 24 hours. Rules Committee went over 20 hours. You had, of course, the Budget Committee. Chairman Arrington is the lead author of the bill. All of the people that had to come together in our conference, and I think a lot of you know we don't all think alike. Democrats made it very clear they didn't want to have any part in helping get America back on track again, but we were never deterred. When this bill could have failed 10 times over, we said we were going to get this done and failure is not an option, and we meant it. We knew we were fighting for the families who've been struggling for way too long under the failed policies of Joe Biden and all the Democrats who did have control of Washington for too long. We watched higher interest rates and higher inflation and lower wages and a demise of the American dream that we knew should not be permanent, but was only going to turn around if we passed a bill to get America back on track. We knew we had to prevent a massive tax increase, so we put it in the bill. We knew we needed to secure America's border, as President Trump ran on all across this country and won the election on, and we put it in this bill. We ran on and said we would produce more American energy, and we put it in this bill. All the things that we knew we needed to do to root out waste, fraud, and abuse in government. Focus on those families who are struggling. All of that is in this one big, beautiful bill. And yes, now the House has come together and passed this bill against all odds, but we're still working on the rest of the process. Still goes to the Senate. The Senate has a lot of work to do too. That's why we've been talking to the Senate for a long time, but it's their turn to take this bill and move forward. But I'll tell you, none of this would be possible without the leadership of President Trump, who every step of the way not only laid out the vision, ran a campaign on this vision, but every step of the way, too, said, whatever you need, let me know. And he was there to help us. Our great speaker, Mike Johnson, who was never deterred, probably hasn't slept in a few days, but never wavered in his commitment to get this done. And this whole team has come together. And our whip has never relented and never stopped pushing to get this done.
So let's talk about what's in this, because it does impact you at home. If you pay taxes, this is a big deal for you because it makes permanent those Trump 2017 tax cuts. That means that your taxes will not be going up next year. This impacts more than 60% of Americans across the country. A lot of Democrats were making a fuss about how this was a big payout for the billionaires. I don't think that more than 60% of Americans are billionaires, so it impacts the middle class and hardworking folks out there. Of course, some signature things from his campaign trail he talked about was no taxes on tips. That's in there. No taxes on overtime. That's in there as well. Border security, more funding to hire more and more ICE agents to continue President Trump's deportation policies. They went after waste, fraud, and abuse to try to make up for that loss in revenue when it came to those taxes. A lot of fighting we saw over the past couple of weeks. You heard a lot about SALT. For those folks that live in red states, this is a big deal for blue state folks that pay a lot of money in property taxes. You had a lot of Republicans from places like New York, New Jersey that were fighting for this, and they were able to raise that from $10,000 to $40,000. It was a huge compromise in the last couple of hours before this vote. And of course, as well as raising the debt ceiling to $4 trillion. This was a big deal for Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent because he was a little anxious that these guys weren't going to be able to get it done by the time that they needed to before the August recess. So that's a big deal for the White House as well. And Medicaid, a lot of fighting over Medicaid, especially for some conservatives from states where they have a lot of constituents on Medicaid. They were worried there were going to be massive cuts, but really, Republicans wanted to go after illegal immigrants that were using Medicaid and able-bodied men that were on Medicaid. They wanted to add work requirements, and those work requirements now will start in 2026. It's a huge win for fiscal conservatives. Now, they didn't get everything, which is why we saw Andy Harris, who is the House Freedom Caucus chair, vote present, and we saw Warren Davidson and Thomas Massie vote no on the bill, but pretty much a party line vote today. I gotta tell you, I'm a little surprised, maybe you're not, Lawrence, that Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader, didn't put up much of a fight on the House floor. They have this tool called the Magic Minute. You might have heard this. It basically is a tool that affords the opposing party's leader to take up the floor for as long as they want to try to delay the vote. We saw Kevin McCarthy, the former House Speaker, use this tactic when the Democrats were trying to pass the the Build Back Better bill for President Biden. A couple years ago, he went on for 8 hours on the House floor, set a record. Leader Hakeem Jeffries really only spoke for about 30 minutes. I just asked him why he didn't hold the floor longer to try to put up a fight. He didn't reply to me. So I guess they knew they weren't going to win on this one. Huge victory for the president.
Huge win for the president, for the Republicans as well, and the American people, too, that are going to be getting those tax cuts. Thanks, Aisha.
Now it goes to the Senate.
That's right.
Thank you, Aisha.
They
reached their goal. They wanted it before Memorial Day weekend.
That's exactly
Here we go.
right. Let's see what happens.
I had a little assumed bias that they would have had buyer's remorse. There were about 9% of folks that voted for Trump, and they said they would change their vote. However, only 25% of those would vote for Harris. As much as they're not happy with Trump, they do not think Democrats offer a viable option.
I wonder why.
Here's how bad it is. You don't understand how devastating it is when in a two-party system, your party is not a viable option. Permission to make an analogy.
Permission granted.
All right, guy walks into a bar. It's closing time. There's two women there. He sits down in the middle. Blonde on the right, brunette on the left.
Where are you going with this?
He's having a good night, okay? He turns to the blonde on the right. She looks good. Can I buy you a drink? She says, yeah, I'll have a martini. They cheers. She opens her mouth. She's super annoying. He can't stand her. He says to himself, God, did I make the wrong decision? So then he turns to the brunette on the left and he says, how you doing, babe? Can I buy you a drink? And she goes, sure, I'll have a beer. It's a dude in a dress. Not a viable option. So he's like to the blonde, let's go back to my place. This is who the Democrats are. They're the brunette cross-dressing at the bar, not a viable option.
I'm revoking permission.
That is,
too late.
That is quite an analogy.
Relent. The teacher wouldn't extend the deadline at first, but she relented after hearing our reasons. Viable. Starting a business without a solid plan is not a viable option. Make an analogy. Let me make an analogy to explain this concept more clearly. Waver in. She didn't waver in her support for her friend, even when things got tough. Demise. The sudden demise of the company shocked the entire industry.
If you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing to my channel to stay up to date with future videos. Thank you for watching.